much.
HIV.gov says more than 38 million people in 2021 globally are living with HIV.
3,091 people have died from Ebola, and 6,574 cases of infection or suspected infection have been reported.
It is a staggering number we never could have imagined. 1 million Americans now dead from COVID.
The 1918 pandemic caused the global deaths of probably 50 and maybe up to 100 million people.
Viruses are responsible for some of the world's most dangerous and deadly diseases, including rabies, Ebola, smallpox, HIV, and the most recent novel COVID-19. What is a virus?
A virus is a microscopic parasite that's generally much smaller than bacteria. Speaking of size, viruses are the smallest type of parasite to exist, and even though some may be as large as 1 micrometer, they are usually not more than 0.02 to 0.3 micrometers in size. A viral particle, or virion, contains a single nucleic acid, RNA or DNA, core surrounded by a protein coat and sometimes enzymes that are required to initiate viral replication. Viruses can only replicate within the cells of animals, plants, and bacteria, and, as such, they are referred to as obligate intracellular parasites.
Where do viruses come from? Viruses are not living things. They're not living things. They don't reproduce, they multiply. There's a difference between the two. And they only multiply inside their host. Outside their host, they cannot multiply.
Viruses cannot survive independently. They do not have the mechanisms to do so. So, how do they infect? Well, they tend to seek out plant, animal, or bacterial host cells, where they can use their cells' machinery to replicate. Again, viruses cannot survive on their own.
Anything that doesn't exist in nature is man-made. Period.
A virus isn't alive, people. It's non-metabolizing. And look at it. I mean, either it's single-stranded or double-stranded RNA or DNA. And it just happens to have the perfect vector for infection, a protein capsid that just bonds to the cell receptor, and then it penetrates and injects its genetic material. And it's like a program, because a virus can't hurt you by itself. It can't reproduce by itself. It's not alive. Your enzymes have to read it and create what it tells you to create. If they don't do that, it can't hurt you. It's nanotechnology. See, viruses add genetic sequences. That's what many of your infections that you pass off as a cold here or the flu there, they're actually changing your DNA.
That's the fact. That's the truth.
You can make an infectious virus particle from purified components.
In various nations, we trust our political leaders or administrative leaders, whether you're in an institution, you trust the leaders to make decisions for you. After all, that's why you think that's why they're in office. And you feel really betrayed when they make the wrong decisions knowingly.
Remember the swine flu scare of 1976? That was the year the U.S. government told us all that swine flu could turn out to be a killer that could spread across the nation. And Washington decided that every man, woman, and child in the nation should get a shot to prevent a nationwide outbreak, a pandemic. Well, 46 million of us obediently took the shot.
This virus was the cause of a pandemic in 1918 and 1919 that resulted in over 500,000 deaths in the United States, as well as 20 million deaths around the world.
See how easy it is. Thus, the U.S. government's publicity machine was cranked into action to urge all America to protect itself against the swine flu menace.
Well, this year you can get protection. The vaccines are safe, easy to take, and they can protect you against flu. So roll up your sleeve. Protect yourself.
One of those who did roll up her sleeve was Judy Roberts. She was perfectly healthy, an active woman, when in November of 1976, she took her shot. 2 weeks later, she says, she began to feel a numbness starting up her legs.
I have a greatly decreased mobility in my lips, and I can't drink through a straw on the right-hand side. I can't blow out birthday candles. I don't whistle anymore, for which my husband is grateful.
So you will now have a legacy of braces on your legs for the rest of your life?
Yes, the weakness in my hands will stay, and the leg braces will stay.
You began to give flu shots to the American people in October of 76. October 1st. By that time, how many cases of swine flu around the world had been reported?
There had been several reported, but none confirmed.
None confirmed. Did you ever uncover any other outbreaks of swine flu anywhere in the world?
No.
Did you ever uncover any other outbreaks of swine flu anywhere in the world?
No. Does it sound familiar? They have not changed. This is how these people are. They haven't changed. The deception. They never checked it. And then they lied to them about the cases. And they had no confirmed case. None worldwide. And yet a whole nation was subjected to not really forced, but coerced vaccinations for the 6 million people.
These same perpetrators of evil also created the HIV virus, but deceived the world that it originated from apes and chimpanzees.
It was the same thing about HIV. I spoke about HIV years ago, but I didn't have the voice at the time. But I spoke against it. I said it was a fraud. At that time, so much so that I became conscious of the language with which we communicated when people were healed of this HIV. Became concerned about how we communicated it because I said it was a fraud.
So, simply put, what is CIMAR?
CIMAR was a clandestine mercenary organization for hire.
Financed by whom?
Financed by foreign governments.
And what was the purpose of CIMAR?
CIMAR was there to go and destabilize certain countries.
And what kind of operations were you doing?
Well, it was clandestine operations. We were involved in coups, taking over countries for other leaders. We were involved in Mozambique, spreading the AIDS virus through medical conditions. We were involved in Angola with Dr. Jonas Savimbi for various operations. We gave military support.
So people were killed during these operations?
Oh, definitely.
You mentioned actively spreading AIDS?
There was a unit in from CIMAR and the white supremacy on the African continent.
And furthermore, he tells us that the purpose of Maxwell's clinics in and around Johannesburg was to infect black people with HIV.
He had the one in Thokoza, he had the one in Alex. If I'm not mistaken, there was on the West Strand. So, and these were research facilities for them to inject people with a solution to see that they prevented AIDS, and in the meantime, they were injecting people with AIDS.
And he was only working on black people in these clinics?
Yes, yeah.
For almost nothing?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So you know what, I mean, what easier way to get a big guinea pig that you live in the apartheid system, black people have got no rights, they need medical treatment. There's a white philanthropist coming in and say, you know what, I'll open up these clinics and I will treat you, I will do this, and meantime, you actually the wolf in sheep's clothing.
And what did he say it was? A war. They were at war. That was why. That was their understanding, even though there was no official war, that they were at war. So it was about the elimination of the black people in South Africa. That's what they said. So there was a cure for it, and they knew it. They hid it from the public. And strengthened the infection. It was calculated, created in the lab, and that's exactly what I said, that the HIV was created.
These are the same people who callously deceived the world with the novel coronavirus in 2020, which some scientists have stated came out from a bat.
Intelligence agencies disagree, which sometimes happens. The FBI believes in the theory that this came from a lab in China. Is the FBI right or wrong in your view, and will we ever get to the bottom of this?
It is much, much more likely that this was a natural evolution from an animal reservoir, likely to a bat to another intermediate host to a human. But until you know for sure, you have to leave open all possibilities. And that's where something like the lab leak type of a hypothesis comes about.
All that lie about it came out of a bat, it came out of a goat, it came out, I said, absolute nonsense. Did the birds or the bats or the animals give birth to them or manufacture them? These are not living things. Come on, wake up.
The latest coronavirus outbreak started in Wuhan, China. Based on initial genetic testing and past outbreaks, they say it's likely the coronavirus originated in bats.
There was a recent paper put out where they looked at the sequence of a virus.
They found that the closest relative to the Wuhan virus was a virus from a bat, 96% similar.
I think that is pretty accepted, that the viruses are very likely coming from bats.
That was a lie from the beginning. And I told you that this thing came out of a laboratory. It was done, it was created. And in fact, the other day, one of the virologists, a doctor, a very highly qualified professional who escaped with her life from China, where it happened, was out in the United States providing evidence that this was planned in the lab in China. Of course, with their collaborators.
A Chinese virologist called Li Mengyan is in hiding tonight after criticizing the Chinese government's duplicitous response to the Wuhan coronavirus. Here's part of what she said to Fox News.
Reason I came to US is because I deliver the message of the truth of COVID-19. If I tell it in Hong Kong, the moment I start to tell it, I will be disappeared and killed. No one can hear me. So for this purpose, I like to go to US and tell the truth of the origins of COVID-19 to the world, to let people understand how terrible, how dangerous it is. This is nothing about politics. This is the thing about whether all the human in the world can survive.
Now remember, I told you before, it was the Chinese that were collaborators, even though it happened in China. The perpetrators were from the United States. They're sitting there like St. Peter and St. Paul, but their day is near.
This is really disturbing stuff. I mean, the Chinese government has done everything in its power to stonewall investigations. We know that. But now we're learning that according to Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, Dr. Anthony Fauci actually could be at the center of what she calls one of the biggest cover-ups in American history.
Yeah. Former director of the CDC laid out a couple of really fascinating points, Julie, that I want to reiterate. First of all, in September of 2019, that Wuhan lab changed 3 protocols that imply guilt. They deleted the strains, the codes of the virus. They changed from civilian to military oversight. And then they brought in a civilian contractor, to change the ventilation system. Every one of those pieces of big circumstantial evidence pointing to their own guilt, that it was a virus created in a lab.
The FBI, the director of the FBI, also came up. I want you to listen to this.
The FBI has for quite some time now assessed that the origins of the pandemic are most likely a potential lab incident in Wuhan. Let me step back for a second. The FBI has folks, agents, professionals, analysts, virologists, microbiologists, etc., who focus specifically.
The full story of what happened at this lab in Wuhan, China. But the Wall Street Journal says the U.S. Department of Energy believes the virus likely spread via a mishap at a Chinese laboratory. That classified conclusion, according to the journal, has now been delivered to the White House and some members of Congress.
So now they agree what I told them in 2020. That, yeah, they came out of a lab. You knew it came out of a lab. Of course, not because you knew from science, you knew because you were part of it.
Dr. Redfield, you pointed to the lab leak theory even before we did. In mid-January of 2020, you expressed concerns to Dr. Fauci, to Jeremy Farrar of UK's Wellcome Trust, and to Dr. Tedros of World Health Organization that, quote, we had to take the lab leak hypothesis with extreme seriousness. And you urged Dr. Fauci to investigate both the lab and the natural hypotheses. Shortly thereafter, on February 1st, Farrar convened a meeting of a group of 11 top scientists across 5 time zones and asked Dr. Fauci to join. And he wrote, quote, my preference is to keep this group really tight. Obviously, ask everyone to treat in total confidence, unquote. Dr. Redfield, you were excluded from this call, but up until then, you had been on you were included in every other conversation. What changed? Why do you think that you were excluded from these conversations?
Thank you very much. I think just to emphasize, in early to mid-January, I did have multiple calls with Fauci, Farrar, and Tedros about how important I thought it was that science get engaged in aggressive pursuing both hypotheses. I also expressed, as a clinical virologist, that I felt it was not scientifically plausible that this virus went from a bat to humans and became one of the most infectious viruses that we have for humans.
Why do you think you were excluded from those calls?
Because it was told to me that they wanted a single narrative and that I obviously had a different point of view.
Is it likely that American tax dollars funded the gain-of-function research that created this virus?
I think it did, not only from NIH, but from the State Department, USAID, and from DOD.
I'm out of time. Thank you very much.
Why are they coming up now? I'll tell you why they're coming up now, not because they want to tell the truth. So let's not be carried away. This is gaslighting. That's what it's about. Smoke screen, that's what this is. And when you see something like this, you got to be thinking, okay, you need God to guide you to know why you're being gaslighted, why there's a smoke screen, because it just means there's something they don't want you to see. And I know what they don't want you to see. Why everybody's calm and quiet? Ask yourself, where went the 5G? Has it been reviewed? Has it been changed? Has it been? No! It went into the cooler. So now, with the smoke screen and the gaslighting, this is supposed to come out without people knowing, and then at the same time, another virus will be released so that virus will be blamed. Why the 5G is actually what's killing people. So you say, why is the 5G necessary for that? Because they need something that can help bring down world population as they planned. They want the population of the world cut down drastically. That's why we can't afford to just slip away and forget. We've got to pray. Because through prayer, we're keeping our world in check.
The Church of Jesus Christ has remained a restraining force of evil in the world. We're the ones to scrutinize everything in the world and to decide what is acceptable or is the perfect will of God. It's our calling.
Very interesting.